Hey guys, welcome back to Tea with Boar. My name is Boar, and today we're making homemade kombucha. In this video, I'll go from start to finish on how to make homemade kombucha, and then we'll do a taste test. If you're here for a specific part of the kombucha making process, I'll leave timestamps right here. Now, let's get on with the video. So what is kombucha? To put it simply, kombucha is just fermented tea. It's made by adding bacteria and yeast to a sweetened batch of tea, which is then left to ferment, resulting in this delicious, bubbly, and healthy drink called kombucha. Now that you know what kombucha is, let me give you the 3 steps needed in making kombucha. Step number 1 is making a Scobie. The Scobie, or the symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast, is this alien-looking white thing that actually ferments our tea. So that's step number 1 in the kombucha making process. It takes usually about 2 to 3 weeks to form, but the good thing about it is that once you have it, you don't have to make it again. You can reuse that same Scobie many times. Once our Scobie has formed, we can move on to step number 2, which is our primary fermentation. We take this Scobie and we put it into a fresh batch of sweetened tea. This then ferments that tea and makes our first real batch of kombucha. Once we have our first unflavored batch of kombucha, we can then move on to step number 3, which is our secondary fermentation. Here, we're going to add some fruit juices to kick up the flavor and boost up the carbonation levels. Now that you have a basic overview, let's go over the ingredients needed to start step number 1, making our Scobie. So the first thing we're going to need is a large glass or ceramic container. The one I use is about 1 gallon or 3.8 liters, but you can use something smaller. You'll just have to scale down everything else in this video. Next we have 7 cups of water, a half cup of white sugar, 2 teaspoons of black tea, 1 cup of raw or unpasteurized kombucha. It has to be raw or unpasteurized because that means that it hasn't been filtered and it still has that yeast and bacteria that is necessary to creating our Scobie. Then we have our tablecloth, which will be put over our kombucha, allowing it to breathe while keeping bugs out. And then finally, elastics to secure our tablecloth. Alright, now that we have our ingredients, let's start making our Scobie. So the first thing we're going to do is let our water come to a boil and then brew our tea. Okay, now we have boiling water. We can turn off the heat, add our tea, add our sugar, and now we just let it cool to room temperature. While we wait, I just want to tell you guys it's super important to keep everything clean. So make sure you wash your hands, and I like to rinse all my tools with white vinegar to make sure there's no bad bacteria. Okay guys, our tea is now room temperature and we are ready to pour it into our container. Okay guys, our sweet tea is in our jar and we can now add our cup of raw organic kombucha. Once that's finished, you guys are pretty much done. You add your cloth. This just prevents any bugs from coming in while still allowing our kombucha to breathe. And then secure it with an elastic band. So now we're going to put this in a dark, warm place and wait 3 weeks. Okay, so in case you're interested in knowing where I actually store my tea, it is in this very dark furnace room. So here's my kombucha. Cover this and then leave it for 3 weeks. And after 3 weeks, you'll have something like this. Here we have something called our starter tea with our beautiful Scobie on top. Now don't worry if your Scobie sinks or goes sideways, that's all natural. As long as it's there, it's there. Okay, so for our primary fermentation, we need a large glass or ceramic jar. The one I have over here is 1 gallon or 3.8 liters, and you can use something smaller, you'll just have to scale down everything else. Next we have 4 teaspoons of black tea. You can actually use different teas in this part. So you can use oolong, white, green, or yellow teas, and black obviously. But you cannot use your herbal teas. So that includes chamomile, peppermint, and a few others, because those don't actually come from the tea plant. So make sure the tea you're using is from the tea plant. Then we have 1 cup of white sugar, 14 cups of water, and then we need our Scobie, 2 cups of our starter tea, a cloth, and an elastic band to keep the bugs out while still letting it breathe. Okay, we have our ingredients for our primary fermentation. And just like in step number 1, we're going to first bring our water to boil. Our water is now boiling. We're going to remove it from the heat and then add our tea as well as our sugar. Then we're going to stir this up nicely and just let it cool to room temperature. While we wait, I'm just going to show you guys how to prepare the container for the primary fermentation. So the first thing we're going to do here is remove the Scobie from the container. Make sure your hands are very clean and make sure that the surface you're placing your Scobie on is also very clean. Any bad bacteria here can really harm our Scobie. Now I'm going to show you guys what the Scobie looks like. It really is this alien looking white thing. But yeah, we can now put that aside and then pour out 2 cups of our starter tea. Once we've poured out 2 cups, we can then either keep the rest for a later primary fermentation or we can dispose of it. Alright, our sweet tea is now at room temperature. We are ready to pour it into our container. Now that we have our sweet tea in our jar, we can add our starter tea, and then finally, the grand finale is placing our Scobie back in, just like that. So, once that's done, we cover it with our cloth, and then secure it with our elastics. So that's pretty much it. We'll then put this in a warm place out of sunlight, and then we'll wait about 6 to 10 days. Okay, we're back in the furnace. This is where I will be leaving the primary fermentation. As you can see, it does get quite dark in here. There's no sunlight coming in, which is great. And the temperature is usually somewhere around 27 degrees Celsius, which is ideal for kombucha making. You can stay between 20 degrees Celsius and the max you should go is about 30 degrees. But if you can get somewhere around 27, that's great. Anyways, guys, I'll leave this here for about 6 days and then we'll check up on it. Alright guys, we've let 9 days go by and our primary fermentation is now complete. So we're going to remove our elastics and our cloth, and I'll show you guys what this looks like. So we have our delicious fermented tea over here with our beautiful mature Scobie on the top. And now we are ready for our secondary fermentation. So our secondary fermentation is where we add our flavor and boost up the carbonation. You can go pretty wild with the flavors, but today we're just going to make simple and delicious ginger kombucha. So for that we are going to need our fermented tea, 1 teaspoon of ginger per 2 cups of kombucha, 1 tablespoon of white sugar per cup of kombucha, and then finally a few airtight bottles. The ones I have over here are called flip top bottles, and they're just really good at making sure no air comes out. So now that you know the ingredients, let me show you how to make it. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is remove our Scobie. Make sure your hands are super clean and make sure that the surface you're placing your Scobie on is also very clean. So we're going to go ahead and remove him, just like this. And now I'm going to show you guys what he looks like. So if you guys can see these dark brown strands that have formed here, don't worry, those are actually really dense strands of yeast, which are a really good sign of your fermentation. Next, we can pour our kombucha into our measuring cups. Now I do want to show you guys that at the bottom of this container, hope you guys can see that, there are those brown strands of yeast. So before pouring out, we're just going to stir this up a little bit to make sure it's all nice and even. Just a quick note here, guys. If you guys remember what we made in step number 1, that was starter tea. Starter tea is super important for our primary fermentation, but in case you have no more of that starter tea, you can actually use 2 cups of your primary fermentation as starter tea for your next primary fermentation. Alright, so we've poured in 4 cups of our primary fermentation. Now we can add our ginger and our sugar. So the first thing we're going to do is cut 2 teaspoons of our ginger. Don't worry about being super precise here, but something about this should be right. So next we're going to cut this into tiny pieces. So as you can see, we now have slices about this size. And I'm actually going to cut them even a little bit smaller so that they're super easy to put into the bottles and they don't clog it when I'm pouring out. Alright, I know I'm gonna get criticized for my knife skills, but this is pretty much what you want. Strands about this size, they're nice and thin. So now we're gonna take our flip top bottle and simply drop them in. Okay, so with 4 cups of kombucha, we're gonna need 4 tablespoons of sugar. Unfortunately, my funnel broke, so we're gonna be using this homemade paper funnel. But yeah, place this like this, and then simply add 4 tablespoons of white sugar. Alright, so we finished our preparation for our secondary fermentation. These 3 bottles right here will ferment for about 3 to 5 days, and this right here is my Scobie, as well as those 2 cups that we saved for our next primary fermentation. So we're going to cover this and leave this all in a dark, warm place. Alright, we're currently on day 2 of our secondary fermentation, which means that our kombucha will be ready to drink tomorrow. And so I just want to show you guys that at the bottom, right here, if you remember during the preparation stage, all that sugar had pretty much sunk to the bottom, and now it's all gone. It's all been consumed by our kombucha, which is a really good sign. So, if you've made kombucha before, you'll know that at the end of your secondary fermentation, your kombucha can become quite explosive. And so what I mean by that is, if you were to just open this on the 3rd day, there's a good chance that your kombucha would overspill and just explode everywhere. So in order to prevent that from happening, we do something called burping. And burping is just a slight release of that pressure during the days leading up to your opening day. So what that looks like, if you guys can see this, is I'm just gonna open this slightly and release some of that pressure. So you can see it's already, you guys see that, right? You can see it's then, as soon as you see it rising, just close it a bit and then let it calm down, and then repeat that process maybe 2 or 3 times. So we'll do it again. And then close it. All right, 3 days have gone by. Our secondary fermentation is now complete, and we can finally try our ginger kombucha. When opening your bottle, you do want to be careful because even though we have burped it, it might still spill over. So I usually like to be near a sink, but today we'll be in the living room. So that's enough talking, let's open it up. All right, so we're gonna open it up gently and just keep an eye on the bubbling. So as you can see, it's really starting to form. And once that happens, don't panic. Just close it and let it calm down. And then you'll have to repeat that a few times until your kombucha is calm enough that you can pour it out without everything spilling. All right, so our kombucha is still quite fizzy, but it's at a point where we can control it pretty well. So now we're gonna be pouring it into our glass. Still be careful though, if it is fizzy, to pour it directly into your cup. And there you have it. You can use a sieve or a strainer if you'd like, but I kind of like those ginger pieces in. So leave that aside and let's try our kombucha. That's really good. That's really refreshing, strong, sweet ginger taste. That tea presence is there, and that really is beautifully carbonated. It's really good. That's delicious. That's great. I do recommend that once your secondary fermentation is done, you leave your kombucha in the fridge. This then stops the fermentation process, because if you leave it in a dark, warm place, it will continue to ferment and it might change the flavor to something that you don't like. So once you've found the taste that you like, just store it in your fridge. Anyways guys, that's about it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.